Stand by for Bawana.org radio. In 3, 2, 1. Cue the announcer.
You found Bawana.org radio, your one source for tech news and reviews. Now, almost live from sunny Florida, here's your host, Bawana McCall.
Greetings, folks, and welcome to episode 260 of Bawana.org radio. We got a great show lined up for you. 8 stories to talk about, ranging from tech all the way to SIM cards, all the way to Superman and Batman. So you want to stick around and listen to this show. I hope everybody enjoyed episode 259, which was a return from the hiatus, one of my mini hiatuses. I got to stop doing that. I really do. I'm trying to be more consistent with this. And Bawana.org radio is one of my first passions. A lot of people don't know this. This is one of the first online shows that I did for an extended amount of time. And it went through some name changes, but it's pretty much the same thing, me talking about tech. And we're going to do the same thing today. Should be a pretty short show. Famous last words. I want to thank everybody for the kind comments on YouTube. My YouTube video went up and everybody's like, yay, he's back. And that's encouraging to get the job done, to do yet another show. And we're going to do it. This is Bawana.org radio, episode 260. So stand by for some of that news, boy. We're about to do it.
It's time for Bawana.org radio's tech news for this week.
And for our first story, we're going to talk about YouTube. YouTube, the tube of YouTubes, YouTube, that popular video site that everybody uses for a lot of different things. You know, people use YouTube to listen to music. I figured that out like around this time last year or the year before. I don't know. Time just seems to fly by. But people actually use YouTube as a music jukebox. And that kind of surprised me. Really, really surprised me, because I was like, you watch videos, you listen to music. Okay, that's kind of different. That's kind of different. But what we're going to talk about today is one feature that I read about over on gigaohm.com about how YouTube is now going to create a subscribe button that people can put on their websites. And I'm kind of shocked this wasn't added already. Many different sites, including Facebook and Twitter and social media sites, all have like and follow me buttons that are independent of the website. And I have a kind of I got some reasons why I think YouTube took this long to do it. AdSense. That's right, YouTube and Google, they're all about them ads. So they want you to go to their page. They want to get that ad impression first, and then they want you to click subscribe once you click on the person's channel. Now, they seem to be moving a little bit away from that. And this article on GigaOM is taking kind of a different angle on it. They're saying that YouTube want more subscribers to equal longer viewer times. And I don't know about that. I realize people on YouTube have short attention spans, and which is why I was hesitant to put longer content on YouTube. Took me a few years to do that. I kept my stuff short. If it was over 10 or 20 minutes, then you would see the viewership drop. People have a low attention span when it comes to this kind of stuff. And apparently GigaOM thinks, and I think some other people are agreeing with them, that they want to have longer viewer times. YouTube tried to add movies and pay-per-view a few times. To me, it really hasn't been successful, because YouTube tends to, I don't know. I guess I could say Google. I'm not going to say YouTube. Google's, sometimes they're impatient. Like, they'll try something, and if it doesn't work for, after 2 months, they'll just scratch it. And, to get longer viewer times, obviously, is something that the site wants. There's more opportunity for more ads, obviously. The more time you got people watching your site, the less time you're going to be watching others. And you're engaging your users. Every website developer wants to have user engagement. You want them on your website. That's why you built it. So here's a quote. It said the YouTube subscribe button lets you add one-click subscribe button to any page. This button lets people subscribe to YouTube without having to leave your site or log into YouTube to confirm their subscriptions. Now, the way that's worded is kind of different from what they're kind of touting it as. This is like the subscribe button is going to be anywhere on the YouTube site. But the way these people are putting in this article, that you'll be able to put it on your website. So I'm like, which is it? You know, I've read it on a couple different places, and GigaOM is kind of leaning towards the latter. I don't know. We're gonna see what they allow us to do. It's the quote, and I mean the paragraph before the quote kind of contradicts it. It says publishers now have the ability to embed a subscribe button into their own websites, but then the YouTube developer says that you'll be able to subscribe on any without having to leave your site to either log into YouTube or confirm their subscriptions. I'm not sure if that's your site is the YouTube site or not. I'm just being a little bit picky here, but I don't know. We're gonna see when this thing comes out how exactly it's going to work, because you know Google's been reluctant to do this, and I'm looking at it at a pessimistic view. Are they really going to give us, you know, an iframe or JavaScript embed to do this, or not? Are they just gonna go with the current way of things? Check it out, guys. This is over on GigaOM.com. They got the details about how YouTube is going to possibly give us a subscribe button to put on our own websites. Speaking of Google, our next story has to do with Gmail. Gmail recently rolled out a new version of their site, and it was met with mixed responses. I really, it was kind of funny because I immediately recognized when people got the new Gmail. When they got the new features, they were like, "What are these tabs? What did they do? Where's my email? Where did everything go?" And the reactions were hilarious. When I first got it, I was kind of scratching my head too, because you know the interface and common sense don't work well together. You would think you could do certain things with it, and you can't. So I highly recommend watching that tutorial when you first get it if you want to know what's going on. But anyway, the next story I'm going to talk about is over on SlashGear. Talks about Gmail getting a feature upgrade for Compose, for the Compose option for composing a new email. And the reason why it's getting an update for is because previously you would compose a new email within Gmail, and it would be a window, a tiny window within the Gmail window at the bottom right. And it was kind of slick. You know, I could dig it. But people generally hate change. And when they saw this, when they saw that that their precious how can I say, their precious Gmail had changed, you know, no longer were the messages looking the same, but now when you compose a message, you get this stupid tiny window at the bottom right. Challenge is stupid. But anyway, Google rolled out a new Compose box. There's an option, if you click on the little, I think there's a little tick at the bottom right of the Compose window, there is an option to default to full screen. So now you won't have the little window within the window. You can default it to full screen, and it will now be full screen, kind of the way it used to be. I guess there was a ton of feedback, and I don't know. It's going to be a little bit bigger than it was before. It's not going to be exactly the way it was before the change. It's going to be bigger than it was at than that little window at the bottom right. I kind of like it. You know, I got used to it because when I compose messages in Outlook for work, I generally don't have a full screen window anyway. I have a smaller window that I compose the message in, and I don't generally do a lot of rich text or HTML or anything like that. So having a small window really doesn't bother me that much unless I'm proofreading a long, drawn-out message. And I've been taught to do my email a certain way. I don't have long, super long books, because those tend to not get read. You should keep your email short, succinct, and to the point. And if it's going to be long and drawn out, you should probably have a phone call or something like that to discuss it. But that's just my IT training that I've gotten, and just to keep email pleasurable. But check this story out, guys, over on SlashGear if you're curious about this new feature and how to get to it. SlashGear has detailed instructions on how to default to full screen for the new Compose to make your new Gmail experience a little bit better than it was before, because the sky is not falling. It's just merely taking a seat. Check it out, guys. Have you ever searched for anything on Google? No? Well, let me tell you. Sometimes it could be a real drag. Did you know that Google has these search operators to make your life a little bit simpler? No, they're not like telephone operators where you dial 0 and ask the operator for some help in getting to your call. These are search operands. Basically, they are symbols to denote you want to modify or change your search parameters. Then your Google. Now, a lot of people don't know about this, and this is kind of a common sense thing for a lot of the tech people, the really advanced tech guys. But I want to talk about this because there are a couple of these things that will make your Google search results so much better. And in this article over on makeuseof.com, they talk about some of the operators which really help. Now, say you want to restrict your Google search to a particular site. I do this all the time because some sites don't have a good search engine, so I just use Google. You put site colon and then the site URL. So, for example, you can do like site colon Bwana.org, and you can search for all the stories on Bwana.org about, I don't know, E3. And you put that in Google, site colon Bwana.org space E3, and it will search Bwana.org, everything about E3. So that's cool one, right? That's a good one, but the best one I see on this list, I think you're going to like it as well, it's the freaking minus sign. I don't know what they call it, but it's an exclude. And a lot of times you search for something and you see a bunch of garbage results. I don't know. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but if you get a bunch of results, you're like, I'm not talking about that. You could do a minus sign and then a term, and it will exclude that term from your search, which will whittle down your search results to something better. This will save you the trouble of having to go through page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6. If you just reduce your results, pretty much the width of your result query. It's one of the best ones, and I think the next best one is quotes. If you're looking for a particular phrase, now a lot of people search Google for error messages, especially when they have problems with their computer. Use quotes. It will search for that exact string. If you put in just the whole thing, you're going to get all these questionable sites at the top of your search results list, which know you're not using quotes, which know you're just searching for certain keywords, and they're using SEO tricks to put their links at the top. And most likely the first link you click on is not the one you're looking for. So use quotes. It really helps. These are just some of the ones they list here, but those are the top 3 that I see here. That minus sign one is so powerful. The site one is good, and the quotes is even better. So just to make your Google search a little bit easier, these are some of the operands you can use to basically reduce your results down to what you're looking for. They've been around since the very early days of Google, so if you're just learning about them, congratulations. Your Google powers have just leveled up. This is over at makeuseof.com. Check it out, guys. They got the details about some Google operands to help your search life be better. Oh, better. Oh, better.
You're listening to Bwana.org Radio, a potpourri of tech news and reviews.
Once upon a time, in a land far away, there was this thing called podcasts, and there was this company called Apple that made this device called an iPod, and the whole world just marveled over how such a simple device could be so awesome. Podcasts were these downloadable segments of audio that people have been doing for years, but they have given this name podcast because people thought it sounded cool to say portable on-demand cast. And then all the old school people were like, no, Apple, no, you can't take our baby, no, you can't have it, Apple, no. And Leo Laporte headed the charge and said, we're going to call them Netcasts, because podcast is something that Apple wants to patent, and we don't want to be trapped in Apple's world. We're going to call them Netcasts. And then people got behind it like, yes, Netcast. And then all of a sudden, we started calling them podcasts again for no reason. Podcast. We listen to podcasts. We're like, oh, man, did you listen to new podcasts? Yeah, dude, I'm subscribed to like $1 radio. Boy, that guy's awesome, man. You see that guy? You hear his laugh? It's so awesome, man. And they would listen to Leo Laporte, listen to NPR. Like, oh, my goodness, I know all these good podcasts. Podcast, Netcasts. We're on the internet. That was like back in 2004, 5, 6. It's almost 7. A little bit 8. But since then, podcasts have kind of died off into the background of conversations. I'm not going to talk about the actual numbers of the shows themselves, but podcasts themselves is kind of, people don't talk about them that much. Everybody's all about YouTube videos and what's your YouTube? What's your YouTube? Back then it was like, what's your podcast? What's your podcast? Now it's like, what's your YouTube? What's your YouTube? And the term YouTube has become synonymous with podcasts because it's basically portable on-demand casts. It's you basically are creating a show that someone can watch later on. That was the whole premise behind podcasts. It was a delayed audio delivery format. It was a great alternative to live shows of people that had stuff to do. So today, Apple announced that the iTunes Store, this article is over on Macworld.com. Apple announced that the iTunes Store has announced that, or Apple has announced that the iTunes Store eclipsed 1 billion podcasts subscriptions. 1 billion podcast subscriptions, and that's a big number. But time out. A subscription is nothing more than someone clicking subscribe in iTunes. It does not mean that they're actively listening to the podcast. It does not mean that they're actively downloading it. Doesn't even mean that they're even listening to anything these podcasts have to say anymore. They're just subscribed. Now, that's a good number. It shows that iTunes was a good mechanism for introducing people to the term podcast and what podcasts are. But it doesn't really say anything about podcasts themselves. Now, I'm a believer that podcasts are still doing well. I mean, I got a lot of colleagues over the Tech Podcast Network who still do podcasts and get great numbers. My numbers are dwindling because of my inconsistency. I talk about it all the time. Every time I get a good amount of numbers, I'll go on a 4-month hiatus and I lose them all. And I get people who can't find me in iTunes anymore because I broke something and I can't fix it. And I get people who just don't want to listen to YouTube for podcasts. And I get people who don't want to download MP3s for content. You get a mixture of everything. And there's people that just go beyond podcasts. They want the video interactivity. They want the YouTube, they want the YouTube experience for a lot of this stuff. People don't listen to internet radio in some circles. A lot of people still do. I'm not going to discount it. But my point about this article is that 1 billion number, I think, is misleading. I think there's a lot of people still subscribing and listening to podcasts, but I don't think it's anywhere near 1 billion. That's just ridiculous. Now, this article goes on to talk about some of the success stories, such as NPR, which is a great podcast, probably one of the best modeled podcasts you can listen to in terms of getting a consistent format with great content all the time. I mean, you find very few people who say something negative about NPR podcasts because they cover such a wide variety of topics. And they have very, very good audio quality and just top-notch production quality of their shows. They've been doing it for years, and you can tell. Now, that's a great example to show that podcasts are doing well, but everybody's not NPR. BD.org Radio is not NPR. We're not the ESPN podcast. We're not the big controversial political show podcast. We're just people talking about tech. And we're definitely not the This Week in Tech of podcasts, because I think Leo Laporte is really the poster man for technology-related podcasts, and he does an excellent job of representing us. But the little guys like me, even though I've been on Twit, I'm still a little guy. I like that. I like being a little guy sometimes. The little guys, we're still getting like 50 to 100 people listening to our shows, and we're content with that. And that's a cool thing. But we have other jobs. A lot of us who have these kind of numbers, we don't make a living off a podcast. We do it as a hobby. It's fun to do. People enjoy our content, and that's our gratification for it. But Apple, man, I don't know. They have a way of throwing numbers out there, and it's good marketing, great marketing. It's like, 1 billion subscriptions. Now you just take that number, you just work with it in your brain, and you know some people hear that and they're like, wow, there's a billion people that listen to podcasts, and Apple doesn't say a word. They just go, 1 billion subscriptions, 1 billion subscriptions, and you know it's kind of without context. It's not misleading, but it's marketing. It is a type of misleading, but you know it's good marketing. So check it out, guys, over on MacWorld.com. They got the details over there about this big number, 1 billion podcast subscriptions over on iTunes. But is there really 1 billion listeners? I don't think so. Check it out. And for our next story, let's talk about a site which has kind of fallen from grace. It used to be one of the top sites I recommended to download software. It's called download.com. And it was purchased, it was acquired, I think CNET. I don't know if CNET started it. They might have been around since the beginning. But I remember back in the day, download.com was very reliable on getting reliable software. Now, this article over on groovypost.com talks about how download.com has pretty much gained crapware status. And the term crapware here refers to the idea that they bundle their software with all kinds of malware. Not really malware, but spyware is the best term, which can be malware. Now you see some of these programs you download, they put these toolbars on your browser. They put all these things that run in the background that send your browsing habits to a site without your permission. That's what we talk about with crapware. And apparently download.com has been doing more and more of this on their programs. They even have an installer which has this stuff built in. They have something called SweetPacks Toolbar. And whenever you see a toolbar installer, just run. Just close the installer and run. Because there's some tricks involved. What these programs do is that they trick you. Because we've been conditioned over the years to, when we install programs, we just click next, 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 next. If we see a checkbox that says I agree or something similar to I agree, we check it and we go next, 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 next. Just keep clicking next until we see that bar start to move and install files. And we've been conditioned to do that. Even the less geeky people know about Install Shield and how those wizards work. And they take advantage of that. So if you don't pay attention to the dialogues, you're going to get all this crapware, this junkware installed on your machine. And you're most likely trying to download an antivirus or something like that. And you get more viruses with that. Some of the more common ones is like these YouTube downloaders. And this is the one they use in this article as an example. Has a great CNET editor's rating, a good average user rating. But when you install it, it says, oh, would you like to install the Delta toolbar? And then you go through the thing and then you select next and blah, blah, blah. It goes through some more stuff. And then the next thing, if you select advanced and tell it not to install the Delta toolbar, it goes to another thing and it says, do you want to install Safe Saver? It's designed to save you money when you shop online. Now, what you have to do in this dialog is you have to actually click decline to not install this. Now, if you click next, which is not really accept, see how they're doing that? If you click next, it'll install the software. And that's the same thing for this Reg Clean Pro. All these junkware programs, it's going to throw on your machine just because you want to install a YouTube downloader. And CNET and download.com is pushing this stuff more and more and more and more and more. It will definitely just kill you. Now, this site, and I can recommend as well. I can recommend it as well. It recommends a site called Ninite.com, which is an automatic installer. Very, very good for those times where you need to install a bunch of programs after reinstall. And it automatically knows. This program automatically knows what to check and uncheck. It is very smart. It will not install crapware on your machine. So that's an option for people who want to go worry-free in the situation. But this is terrible. That these download.com links, and download.com's links are usually one of the first ones to show up on Google searches, that they're riddled with all this spyware and this malware, and it's only getting worse. And CNET's own download.com installer has this stuff in there as well. So it's very, very bad. Check it out, guys. Over on groovypost.com, they got the details about CNET. Download.com has officially gained crapware status amongst a lot of tech people.
You found Bwana.org Radio. Tech news and tech gadgets for the hardcore geek in all of us.
And for our next story, we're going to talk about SIM cards. SIM cards are the technology that we use in our cell phones to essentially give our phone an identity. It's a great GSM technology that's been around for many, many years. You've probably heard the term before. Some of the American carriers didn't use SIM cards in the past, like Verizon and Sprint. I believe they do now. I don't know. I haven't used Verizon and Sprint in years. I've been with AT&T and T-Mobile recently, and they do use SIM cards in their phones. They're these tiny rectangular, look like chips, computer chips, that you put in your phone, and it's something that's been, fairly safe to use. Right. No. There's a SIM card hack out, and it's kind of scary. Imagine if you will, what if I told you that if you could receive a couple text messages and someone could essentially own your phone? I mean, I say own your phone, I mean they can record calls, listen in on your calls, steal mobile data, that kind of stuff. Kind of scary to think about. And that's essentially what's out there. There is a hack that will hack about, let's see, they put a number in here. It says the exploit says that there are up to 750 million handsets that could be vulnerable to the hack. And the problem is that the SIM cards are using not triple DES, but just regular DES encryption, which is fairly weak, easily crackable. Some of the newer SIM cards are using triple DES, and I'm quite sure I'm using one of the newer ones. They're using triple DES, and they are safe. But and this is a quote, out of all the mobile phones littering the world, about half of them use SIM cards that still use older DES encryptions. About half. But this exploit only hits like maybe a small fraction of that. But this researcher who found this, he plans to reveal his findings during the upcoming Black Hat conference. He says, this article says, don't worry too much, as Noah believes cyber criminals haven't figured out the hack, and it will most likely take around 6 months for somebody to figure it out. I don't buy that. That doesn't make me feel better, because if you figured it out, somebody else can figure it out. And now that you've brought it out to the limelight, somebody's probably trying to figure it out right now. But with a couple of text messages, somebody could listen in on your calls. And you thought the NSA was scary. You thought prison was scary. What if I told you potato? If I sent you a text message that said potato, and then all of a sudden I know all of your contacts and I know all of your potato messages. Scary stuff. Yes. Check it out, guys, over on slashgear.com. The SIM card hack. Let's hope it doesn't hit the wild. It's really, really nasty sounding stuff. We don't want this thing to get out, so check it out. And for our final story, we're going to talk about a little bit of some comic book hero stuff. Superman and Batman. Superman, Batman, kicking them heroes' butts. I should patent that song. Superman and Batman are apparently teaming up for a Man of Steel sequel. This comes by way of Comic-Con. Man of Steel director Zack Snyder took the stage and confirmed that there will be a sequel to the new Superman movie that is scheduled for release at some point in 2015. This wasn't too surprising, but Warner Bros. Announced that the sequel would team up between Superman and Batman, bringing the two together in the first time in a film. Now, they've been in all kinds of cartoon movies, which are my favorite. Anime series, Justice League are some of the best out there. I was just watching Justice League Doom last night, and I was just marveling at how well they're done compared to the actual movies. They're more truer to the comic books, in my opinion. But I'm kind of reluctant to get excited about this. Um, but one good thing is that Christian Bale will likely not be playing Batman. That's a good thing. I don't think Christian Bale and Henry Cavill, which is the guy who played Man of Steel, would work too well together. Because if he done like this, we would not be at the time I was going to die. Superman, if you would have had the Krypton, I am the Witcher. You know, we don't want that kind of stuff going on. Frankly, I'm tired of Christian Bale as Batman. But I would rather see more animated series, and I was glad to see that there were some more movie announcements from Comic-Con regarding some more Justice League related movies, which are very, very fun to watch. But this Superman Man of Steel sequel, I don't know, man. I don't know if they're going to be able to do the Avengers thing. Avengers was something that is very hard to do in Hollywood because you have to have a lot of money. You have to get a lot of leading actors in the same movie. Somebody's going to have to take a pay cut. And somebody's going to want more money than the other actors. And somebody's going to complain for not having enough screen time. And somebody's agent's going to threaten to walk out if they don't get enough lines in the movie. And somebody is going to have to direct it. And somebody's going to have to keep their calm. And somebody's going to have to get me some better coffee. Somebody. I don't know, man. I got mixed feelings about this because I really want this to succeed, but I'm being very, very realistic. I don't think it's going to. If they do it the way I think they're going to do it, which is going to be in subpar Hollywood fashion. I really want a good Justice League movie, but I don't think it can be done. Avengers, to me, was an anomaly. It was like Neo. It was like the one. It was like it was like the exception to the rule. Movies come and go, but there can only be one Avengers. Even though I love Marvel and I love DC, but I would rather see a DC movie because I think Justice League has better lore surrounding the Justice League than I think the Avengers do. That's a personal opinion. Lots of reasons to debate against it. I don't really care. It's just a personal preference. But Hollywood, man, they're just going to mess it up. They're going to mess it up. And it's a sad thing to see. But I'm not going to ramble about this too much more. Check it out, guys, over on /gear.com. Superman the Batman movie possibly coming, and the Man of Steel sequel. Is that a good thing or bad thing? You decide. I've decided. And that concludes all of our stories for this week for episode 260 of Buona.org Radio. I want to thank everybody for listening. Please follow my channel on Twitter at twitter.com/Buona or twitter.com/Buona Live. If you wish to catch my live stream over on twitch.tv/Buona, you can follow that as well. Check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/IOBuffer. That's youtube.com/IOBuffer. I'm also on Google Plus at google.com/+Buona. You can follow me over there. We do Buona.org Radio every Tuesday and Thursday nights. We're recording it live at twitch.tv/Buona, so if you want to see behind the scenes, come by on Tuesday afternoons. You know, I usually start after about 6 p.m. I don't have a definite time yet because my schedule fluctuates so much. But, you know, just follow the channel and, you know, just be prepared to be notified after 6 p.m. Eastern and around 6 p.m. Eastern. You can see behind the scenes of how I create these shows. We got some people watching right now as I create this show. So all you YouTube subscribers, I appreciate the kind comments, and I hope you all enjoyed this show as well. That concludes the show for episode 260 of Buona.org Radio, and I will see you next time.